My name is Elena. I am 34 years old, and I never thought my own sister would betray me like this. 5 years of marriage to Jason, and I believed we were happy. When Brianna needed a kidney, I volunteered without hesitation. What I never expected was that while I recovered from surgery, they would plot behind my back. The inheritance seemed so important to them. They risked everything. They never bothered to read the fine print about infidelity. Let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever been betrayed by someone you loved. Growing up, Brianna and I were inseparable. Just 4 years apart, we did everything together. That bond only grew stronger after our parents died in a car accident when I was 16 and she was 12. It was a rainy night in October, and they were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a drunk driver hit them head-on. Neither survived the impact. That night changed our lives forever. Our grandparents took us in. They were stern but loving people who valued family above all else. Grandpa Thomas was a successful investment banker who had amassed considerable wealth throughout his career. Grandma Eleanor was equally successful as a real estate developer. They raised us with strict moral values, emphasizing honesty, loyalty, and the importance of family bonds. When our grandparents passed away within a year of each other while I was in college, they left behind a substantial trust fund for Brianna and me. The trust came with specific conditions. Though we never really paid much attention to the fine print, we were grieving, and the details of inheritance seemed unimportant at the time. The lawyer, Daniel Thompson, explained the basics, but there were clauses neither of us fully understood. We were just grateful for the financial security that allowed us to finish our education. I pursued a career in digital marketing, working my way up at a prominent agency in Chicago. I always tried to look out for Brianna, feeling responsible for her as her older sister. She struggled more with the loss of our parents, acting out in college, and having trouble finding her professional path. She bounced between jobs, never quite finding her calling. I supported her financially whenever needed, which was more often than I care to admit. I met Jason at a company event 5 years ago. He worked in the finance department, and we hit it off immediately. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in my life and goals. After dating for 2 years, we got married in a beautiful lakeside ceremony. Brianna was my maid of honor. She seemed happy for me, though looking back, I remember glimpses of something else in her eyes during the reception, something I chose to ignore. Jason and Brianna always had what I thought was a normal in-law relationship. They were friendly but not particularly close. They would make small talk at family gatherings, discuss sports or current events, but nothing that indicated a deeper connection. At least, that is what I believed. Brianna always had a complicated relationship with money. Despite the trust fund providing a comfortable allowance, she constantly depleted her accounts with impulsive purchases and risky investments. She would call me in tears, asking for loans that she rarely repaid. Jason often expressed frustration with her financial irresponsibility, which makes what happened later all the more ironic and painful. Everything changed when Brianna was diagnosed with end-stage renal disease. Her kidneys were failing rapidly, the result of an autoimmune condition that had gone undetected for years. The doctors explained she needed a transplant soon, or she would be on dialysis indefinitely. The waiting list for a deceased donor kidney was years long. Without hesitation, I volunteered to be tested as a potential donor. The idea of my sister suffering was unbearable. The testing process was rigorous, both physical and psychological evaluations, to ensure I was a suitable donor. When the results came back positive, showing I was a match, I felt nothing but relief. I could save my sister. The decision seemed obvious. Jason initially appeared supportive. He held my hand during consultations and assured me he would be there throughout my recovery. Yet there were moments when his smile did not reach his eyes, subtle hints of concern that I misinterpreted as worry for my health. As the surgery date approached, Jason began asking unusual questions about our finances and the trust fund. He wondered about the health insurance coverage, the time I would need off work, and whether there were provisions in the trust for medical emergencies. At the time, I thought he was being prudent, looking out for our future. Now I recognize it as the beginning of his scheme. Brianna grew increasingly emotional as the transplant date neared. She would call me late at night, alternating between gratitude and guilt. I reassured her repeatedly that this was my choice, that her life was worth any temporary pain or inconvenience I might experience. If only I had known what that sacrifice would truly cost me. The weeks of preparation were physically and emotionally exhausting. Multiple appointments, blood tests, psychological evaluations. The doctors wanted to ensure I fully understood the risks, potential complications during surgery, the recovery period, the small but real impact on my long-term health. None of those risks deterred me. My sister needed me, and I would not fail her. The night before the surgery, Jason held me close as we lay in bed. He whispered that I was the most selfless person he had ever known, that my capacity for love amazed him. The memory of those words now burns like acid. Was he already planning their betrayal as he spoke those lies? Was my supposed virtue just another tool in their manipulation? These questions haunt me still. The morning of the surgery arrived with a mixture of anxiety and determination. I woke up at 5:30, hours before we needed to leave for the hospital, unable to sleep from the nervous energy coursing through my body. Jason prepared breakfast, but I could barely eat. My mind kept running through scenarios, both good and bad. At the hospital, the preoperative procedures seemed to last forever. Nurses inserted IVs, doctors reviewed the procedure once more, and the anesthesiologist explained exactly what would happen when I went under. Brianna was in a separate preparation area, but they wheeled her in briefly before we were taken to the operating rooms. Her eyes were filled with tears as she squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you for saving my life." That moment, at least, I believe was genuine. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took effect was counting backward from 10. I do not think I got past 7. Waking up was disorienting. The pain came in waves, radiating from my left side despite the medication flowing through my IV. My throat was raw from the breathing tube. The nurse noticed I was awake and immediately checked my vitals, assuring me everything had gone perfectly. Both Brianna and I had come through the surgery without complications. My kidney was already functioning in her body. The first day passed in a blur of pain medication and fitful sleep. I vaguely remember Jason visiting, his face appearing above mine, his hand cool against my forehead. He did not stay long, explaining he needed to check on Brianna and then get home to take care of some things. I was too groggy to question this. The following days established a pattern. Jason would visit briefly in the mornings, usually when doctors were doing their rounds. He claimed the hospital environment made him anxious, that he could better support me by ensuring everything at home was prepared for my return. He mentioned work deadlines, household chores, prescription pickups. Always a reason to be elsewhere. Brianna, surprisingly, recovered more quickly than I did. Kidney recipients often bounce back faster than donors, the doctors explained. By the third day, she was able to walk to my room. She would sit with me for hours, chatting about inconsequential things, her color improving visibly day by day. My gift was working inside her. Despite the pain, that knowledge brought me comfort. Sometimes, in the haze between sleep and wakefulness, I would hear Brianna and Jason talking in hushed tones. Their conversations would stop abruptly when they noticed me stirring. I thought they were discussing my condition, perhaps trying not to worry me with medical details. How naive I was. Once, I distinctly remember hearing Jason say, "We need to be patient. This has to be handled delicately." Brianna responded with something about timing and making sure. In my medicated state, I dismissed it. Now, those fragments haunt me. The first pieces of a puzzle I would only later understand. After 8 days in the hospital, the doctors determined I was ready to go home. Jason seemed strangely reluctant, asking if perhaps I should stay longer. The doctor insisted I would recover better in familiar surroundings, as long as I had support. Jason nodded, but I caught a flicker of something like disappointment cross his face. Coming home was both a relief and a challenge. Our two-story house suddenly seemed full of obstacles. Stairs became mountains to climb. The short walk from the bedroom to the bathroom left me winded. Simple tasks required monumental effort. Jason set up a recovery area in our guest bedroom downstairs, explaining it would be easier than navigating the stairs to our master bedroom. It made sense, but it also meant we no longer shared a bed. Jason returned to work almost immediately, claiming he had used up most of his leave during my hospital stay. He would leave early and return late, often after I had taken my evening medication and was already drifting off to sleep. On weekends, he would run endless errands, always just out of reach. Brianna, meanwhile, visited almost daily. She would bring flowers, magazines, and homemade food that I rarely had the appetite to eat. She seemed energetic, glowing with health, my kidney serving her well. She would help with small tasks, adjust my pillows, refill my water, always the attentive sister, paying back her debt. Yet there was a pattern to her visits too. She always arrived when Jason was at work and would leave hastily if he came home early. If I mentioned feeling tired, she would insist I rest, urging me to take my pain medication, which inevitably put me to sleep. When I awakened, she would be gone. The physical pain was significant, but the emotional isolation was worse. I felt disconnected, not just from normal life, but from the two people who should have been my greatest supports. There were moments when I would catch them exchanging glances they thought I could not see, small gestures with meanings I could not decipher, a hand lingering too long on a shoulder, a private joke I was not part of. By the 4th week of my recovery, these moments had accumulated enough to create a persistent discomfort, like a pebble in my shoe, that I could not dislodge. But I silenced my suspicions, attributing them to the medication, the pain, the dramatic life change that comes with losing an organ. I told myself I was being paranoid, ungrateful even, to question the two people who were caring for me. Looking back, I can see how perfectly they manipulated the situation. My physical vulnerability, my emotional dependence, my absolute trust in both of them. They used my recovery as cover for the beginning of their betrayal, knowing I was too weak to question, too medicated to notice, too trusting to suspect. 6 weeks into my recovery, the fog began to lift. The pain became more manageable, requiring less medication. My mind grew clearer, more alert to the subtle changes in my home and relationships. That clarity brought with it the first undeniable signs that something was wrong. I noticed Jason guarding his phone. He had never been secretive before, often leaving it on countertops or tables without concern. Now he kept it in his pocket, took calls in another room, and had added a new passcode. One morning, while he showered, his phone buzzed repeatedly on the nightstand. I could see Brianna's name flashing on the screen. 3 text messages in quick succession, at 6:15 in the morning. When I mentioned it casually at breakfast, Jason claimed they were discussing my recovery plan. His eyes never met mine as he spoke. Late-night phone calls became frequent. Jason would step outside onto the patio, speaking in hushed tones. When he returned, and I questioned who had called at such a late hour, he would mention work emergencies or friends in different time zones. The explanations were plausible individually, but became suspicious in their frequency. Brianna underwent a transformation. Her visits continued, but she arrived in new clothes, wearing makeup that was more sophisticated than her usual style. She had her hair professionally colored and cut. When I complimented the changes, she mentioned wanting to make the most of her second chance at life. A reasonable explanation, yet something felt performative about it, as though she were dressing for an audience that was not me. I caught them once, in a moment they did not know I witnessed. I had been napping on the living room couch and woke silently. Through the cracked door to the kitchen, I saw them standing close, Jason tucking a strand of hair behind Brianna's ear, an intimacy that sent ice through my veins. She leaned into his touch, their eyes locked in a way that spoke volumes. I made a noise deliberately, and they jumped apart. Jason immediately busying himself with making coffee, Brianna suddenly very interested in her phone. Neither mentioned the moment, and I was still too uncertain, too afraid of the implications, to confront them. My best friend Rachel visited one afternoon when both Jason and Brianna were absent. After an hour of normal conversation, she carefully asked if everything was all right with my marriage. When I asked why she would question that, she mentioned running into Jason and Brianna at a restaurant across town, sitting in a corner booth, looking very comfortable with each other. Rachel had waved, but they had not noticed her. Or perhaps had pretended not to. Her words confirmed my growing suspicions were not just products of my imagination or medication. I began paying closer attention. I noticed Brianna's perfume lingering in our home on days she had not visited me. A different coffee mug in the sink, when Jason claimed to have been home alone. Receipts for dinners for 2 on evenings Jason said he had worked late. Small inconsistencies that alone meant nothing, but together formed a disturbing pattern. Then came the conversation about the trust fund. I was resting in the backyard, a book open but unread on my lap, when Jason and Brianna stepped onto the patio, unaware of my presence around the corner. They were discussing money, specifically the conditions of our grandparents' trust. Jason mentioned something about timing being essential, and Brianna responded with, "Once we have confirmation, we can move forward with the plan." They moved inside before I could hear more, but their serious tones and furtive manner left little doubt they were plotting something significant. The next day, while looking for a postage stamp in Jason's desk, I found a folder with legal documents about inheritance law. Specifically, there were printed articles about conditions under which trust fund distributions could be accelerated or reallocated among beneficiaries. Several sections were highlighted, particularly those mentioning how the birth of a child could affect distribution schedules. It seemed an odd topic for Jason to research, given that we had decided to wait a few more years before starting a family. That evening, I attempted to confront Jason, asking directly if there was something going on between him and Brianna. His denial was immediate and forceful. He seemed offended I would even suggest such a thing, turning the conversation around to question whether my medication was causing paranoia. He reminded me that the doctors had warned about emotional side effects from the surgery and recovery process. His gaslighting was so effective that I actually called my doctor the next day to ask about paranoia as a side effect. The doctor assured me it was not common, but suggested I mention any concerns at my next appointment. Jason's deflection only intensified my suspicions. I began documenting the inconsistencies, keeping a journal of their behaviors, the times they were unaccounted for, the hushed conversations that stopped when I entered a room. I needed evidence, something concrete beyond my growing instinct, that I was being betrayed by the 2 people I loved most. I made a difficult decision. I installed a tracking app on Jason's phone, while he slept, and set up a small camera in our living room, hidden among the books on our shelf. The actions felt foreign to who I had always been, a woman who valued trust and privacy, but desperation and self-preservation drove me forward. I needed to know the truth, whatever it might be. The waiting was excruciating, each alert from the tracking app showing Jason's location changing. Each notification that motion had triggered the camera sent my heart racing. I was transforming into someone I did not recognize, someone suspicious and secretive. But then, had I not already been transformed by their actions? Was this not simply the shape of a woman fighting to understand why her life was unraveling? Rachel supported me through this time, offering her apartment as a refuge when the atmosphere at home became too suffocating. She reminded me that seeking truth was not wrong, that my instincts deserved respect. Her validation kept me from doubting myself entirely, as Jason continued to suggest my suspicions were health-related delusions. The evidence accumulated slowly, but steadily. The tracking app showed Jason visiting Brianna's apartment when he claimed to be working late. The camera captured them in intimate conversations in my own living room, their body language unmistakable. They were careful never to cross definitive lines in my home, but their emotional betrayal was clear in every lingering touch, every secretive smile. What I still did not understand was why. Why risk our marriage, our family bond? Why now, when I was at my most vulnerable. The answers would come soon enough, and they would be more devastating than I could have imagined. The truth revealed itself piece by excruciating piece. One night, while Jason showered, I did something I had never imagined myself doing. I unlocked his phone using his fingerprint as he slept. His text messages with Brianna stretched back months, predating my surgery. The early exchanges were innocent enough, discussions about my health and the upcoming procedure. But shortly before the operation, the tone changed. "What if this is our opportunity?" Brianna had written. The timing could not be more perfect. Jason's response made my blood run cold. "I have looked into it. The trust specifies priority distribution to the first beneficiary with a child. We could secure the entire inheritance." Their plan unfolded before my eyes in text, after damning text. They had been having an affair for months. My surgery provided the perfect cover for them to conceive a child. While I recovered, physically unable to have sex with my husband, they would claim any pregnancy resulted from Jason and me, conceived just before my operation. By the time the truth became apparent, they believed the inheritance would already be secured. Brianna had even researched the medical details. The recovery period for kidney donors means no sexual activity for 6 to 8 weeks. If I get pregnant now, we can claim it happened before her surgery. The dates will work. They had calculated everything, down to how my post-surgical condition would prevent me from questioning Jason's frequent absences. They discussed how my gratitude for Brianna's daily visits would blind me to her true purpose in our home. I read every message, each word a knife twisting deeper. Their contempt for me was palpable. I was not a sister or wife to them, but an obstacle to wealth. My kidney was not enough. They wanted everything I had. The final confirmation came the following day. Using the tracking app, I followed Jason to Brianna's apartment across town. I waited in my car for 20 minutes, gathering courage, before approaching her building. My hands trembled as I used the key Brianna had given me years ago for emergencies. I heard them before I saw them, their voices carrying from the bedroom. I stood frozen in the hallway, my worst fears confirmed by the sounds of their intimacy. When they finally emerged, wrapped in bathrobes, their shock at seeing me was absolute. "How could you?" The words seemed inadequate for the magnitude of their betrayal, yet they were all I could manage. Jason recovered first. "Elena, this is not what it looks like. Do not insult me further by lying," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know everything. The affair, the plan to get pregnant, the trust fund, all of it." Brianna's face drained of color. "You went through our private messages? Your private messages about stealing my inheritance? About conceiving a child while I recovered from donating my kidney to you?" "Yes, I did." The absurdity of her indignation would have been laughable if the situation were not so devastating. Jason attempted to approach me, but I backed away. "We need to talk about this rationally," he said. "There is nothing rational about betraying someone who loved you," I responded. "Both of you." Brianna suddenly burst into tears, not from remorse, but frustration. "You do not understand. I am already pregnant, 10 weeks along." The timing matched exactly with my surgery. While I lay in a hospital bed, my side cut open to save her life, she had been sleeping with my husband. The physical pain of the realization was immediate and intense, a vice grip around my chest. "It was the perfect solution for everyone," Jason explained, as though discussing a business transaction. "We need the money from the trust. You know how your grandparents structured it. The first to have a child gets priority distribution. So my kidney was not enough for you?" I asked Brianna. "You needed my husband and my inheritance too?" Her answer revealed the depth of her resentment. "You have always had everything handed to you. The better grades, the stable career, the perfect husband. Grandma and Grandpa always favored you. I was just evening the score." Evening the score? By taking the man I loved? By using the life I saved to betray me? The room seemed to spin around me. "It was not personal," Jason said, which might have been the cruelest statement of all. "It was about securing our future." "Our future?" You mean yours and Brianna's, I clarified. We thought you might understand eventually, Brianna added. That you might even be happy for us. The delusion in her statement was staggering. Happy that my sister and husband betrayed me while I recovered from surgery? Surgery I underwent to save your life? Jason attempted a different approach. The trust has more than enough for all of us. You would not have been left with nothing, except my dignity, my marriage, my family. I felt something break inside me, a dam of emotion I had been holding back. I gave you my kidney. I screamed at Brianna. Part of my body lives inside you, and this is how you repay me? The confrontation escalated, with both of them alternating between justifications and blame. Jason claimed Brianna had seduced him. Brianna insisted it had been his idea initially. Neither accepted full responsibility. Neither showed genuine remorse for the pain they had caused, only regret at being discovered. The physical and emotional stress became too much. I felt lightheaded, my vision narrowing. The last thing I remember is Jason reaching out to catch me as I collapsed. I woke up in the hospital, monitors beeping steadily beside me. Rachel sat in a chair next to the bed, her face lined with worry. She explained that Jason had called an ambulance when I lost consciousness. The doctors diagnosed extreme stress and dehydration, warning that such intense emotional trauma could potentially impact my remaining kidney function if not addressed. As I lay in that hospital bed, the same one where I had recovered from giving part of myself to save Brianna, the full weight of their betrayal settled over me. I had sacrificed a piece of my body for someone who had stolen a piece of my heart in return. Dr. Bennett, my nephrologist, visited later that day. His concern was evident as he reviewed my charts. Emotional stress can significantly impact kidney function, he explained. For your health, you need to remove yourself from whatever situation caused this level of distress. I nodded, already knowing what I needed to do. When he left, I asked Rachel for her phone and made a call to Daniel Thompson, the family lawyer who managed our trust. His voice was familiar and comforting as I asked for an urgent meeting. Of course, Elena, he said. Is everything all right? No, I answered honestly, but I am hoping you can help me make it better. The meeting with Daniel Thompson took place in his office 3 days later. I had been discharged from the hospital with strict instructions to avoid stress, a nearly impossible directive given the circumstances. Rachel drove me to the downtown high-rise, where Thompson Legal had occupied the same corner office for 20 years. Daniel greeted me warmly, his familiar silver hair and kind eyes, a welcome sight amid the chaos my life had become. He had been our grandparents' trusted advisor, and had known Brianna and me since we were children. If anyone understood the intricacies of our trust, it was him. You look unwell, Elena, he said, gesturing to a comfortable chair across from his desk. I was sorry to hear about your hospitalization. Is your recovery from the transplant not progressing? The transplant recovery is fine, I replied. It is everything else that has fallen apart. I proceeded to explain the situation, watching as his expression shifted from concern to shock, to barely concealed anger. When I finished, Daniel removed his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. I was afraid something like this might happen, he said quietly. What do you mean? He sighed heavily. Your grandparents were very wise people. They understood human nature, perhaps better than most. He reached for a thick folder on his desk, opening it to reveal the trust documents. There is a clause in the trust that I do not think either you or Brianna paid much attention to during the initial reading. He turned the document toward me, pointing to a section titled Moral Conduct and Ethical Considerations. I read it carefully, my eyes widening as the implications became clear. The trust explicitly states that any beneficiary who commits or participates in infidelity within a marriage forfeits their right to the inheritance, Daniel explained, as does any person with whom they commit such infidelity if that person is also named in the trust. So if Brianna and Jason both would be disqualified from receiving any portion of the trust, he confirmed. Your grandparents experienced the pain of infidelity in their own families. Your grandfather's father left his mother for another woman, causing financial ruin. They included this clause specifically to protect against the kind of betrayal you are describing. A strange sense of calm settled over me. They never read the fine print, did they? Most people do not, Daniel said with a sad smile. They see what they want to see. I leaned forward. What do I need to prove this? Evidence of the affair, and evidence of their intent to manipulate the trust distribution, he replied. Text messages, emails, witness statements, anything that clearly establishes their relationship and their motives. I nodded, thinking of the messages I had photographed, the recordings from my hidden camera, the tracking data from Jason's phone. I have most of that already. Daniel looked impressed. You have been thorough. I learned from my grandparents to be prepared, I said, feeling a connection to them I had not experienced in years. They had protected me from beyond the grave, their foresight now a shield against those who would harm me. We spent the next 2 hours compiling the evidence and discussing the legal strategy. Daniel also recommended a divorce attorney, a colleague he trusted implicitly. Dorothy Miles is the best family law attorney in the city, he assured me. She will ensure Jason cannot claim any marital assets based on your independent inheritance. By the time I left Daniel's office, we had scheduled a formal meeting with Jason and Brianna for the following week. I felt empowered for the first time since discovering their betrayal, no longer just a victim, but someone taking control of her future. The divorce filing was my first step. Dorothy Miles was everything Daniel had promised, efficient and compassionate. She filed the papers immediately, citing adultery and emotional cruelty. Jason was served at his office, a public statement that our private pain was now a matter of record. When the day of the meeting arrived, I entered Daniel's conference room with my head held high. Rachel sat beside me, a silent support. Jason and Brianna arrived separately, each with their own attorney. Jason looked haggard, his confident demeanor replaced by nervous energy. Brianna appeared defiant, one hand resting protectively over her slightly rounded abdomen. Daniel began formally, thanking everyone for attending. Then he turned to me. Elena has brought some serious concerns to my attention, and as the trustee of the Henderson Family Trust, I am obligated to investigate them. Jason's attorney, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit, immediately objected. My client is in the middle of divorce proceedings. Any financial discussions should occur within that context. This meeting concerns the trust specifically, which predates and exists independently of the marriage, Daniel countered smoothly. The trust has specific provisions that may affect both Mr. Wright's and Miss Henderson's eligibility as beneficiaries. I watched as uncertainty flickered across both their faces. This was not proceeding as they had anticipated. Daniel projected the relevant section of the trust document onto the wall screen. Any beneficiary who engages in marital infidelity, either by committing such an act or by participating with another in such an act, shall forfeit all rights to distribution from this trust. This provision exists to uphold the family values of loyalty, honesty, and respect that we, Thomas and Eleanor Henderson, hold dear. The color drained from Jason's face. Brianna's attorney, a younger woman who had been taking notes, suddenly stopped writing. What exactly are you suggesting? Brianna demanded. I am not suggesting anything, Daniel replied calmly. I am stating that based on the evidence Elena has provided, you and Mr. Wright have engaged in a relationship that violates this provision of the trust. He proceeded to present the evidence methodically. The text messages discussing their plan, the location data showing Jason's frequent visits to Brianna's apartment, the witness statement from Rachel, confirming she had seen them together at times they had claimed to be elsewhere, the recorded conversations from my living room, where they discussed accelerating the trust distribution through Brianna's pregnancy. By the time he finished, the room was silent. Jason stared at the table, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Brianna looked frantically at her attorney, who appeared equally stunned by the comprehensive case against them. This is preposterous, Brianna finally said, though her voice lacked conviction. You cannot disinherit me based on who I choose to love. The trust is not disinheriting you based on love. Daniel corrected. It is disinheriting you based on the choice to engage in infidelity with your sister's husband, a clear violation of the moral clause. Jason finally spoke, his voice barely audible. There must be some way to resolve this. Some compromise. I met his gaze steadily. The time for compromise was before you betrayed me. Before you plotted to steal my inheritance while I recovered from surgery, I underwent to save your lover's life. Daniel cleared his throat. The terms are quite clear. Based on the evidence presented, neither Jason Wright nor Brianna Henderson is eligible to receive distributions from the Henderson Family Trust. All assets will remain, with the sole eligible beneficiary, Elena Henderson. This is not fair, Brianna cried, tears streaming down her face. What about my baby, your niece or nephew? The mention of the child struck me deeply. The innocent life created through their betrayal would still be my blood relation, my family. The child has committed no wrong, I acknowledged. Daniel nodded. There are provisions we can discuss regarding the child's future educational needs, but those are separate from your disqualification, Brianna. Jason turned to me, desperation evident in every line of his face. Please, Elena. We made a terrible mistake. I was confused, weak. We can work through this. There is nothing to work through, I replied, surprised by the steadiness of my voice. You did not just betray me once in a moment of weakness. You calculated, planned, and executed a sustained betrayal while I was at my most vulnerable. That reveals character, not confusion. Brianna tried a different approach. He seduced me, she claimed, pointing at Jason. He said we could have everything if I just went along with his plan. I was vulnerable after the surgery, grateful to be alive. Jason's head snapped toward her. That is a lie. It was your idea from the start. You said Elena had always gotten everything, that it was your turn. Their unified front collapsed, as each tried to minimize their own culpability. They turned on each other with the same calculated precision they had once directed at me. Their true characters revealed, not in their betrayal of me, but in their betrayal of each other when faced with consequences. I stood, gathering my belongings. I have heard enough. Daniel has explained the legal realities. My attorney has filed for divorce. I have nothing more to say to either of you. As I walked toward the door, Jason called out one last desperate plea. What about forgiveness? Does that mean nothing to you? I paused, turning back to face them both. Forgiveness is a gift, not an obligation. Perhaps someday I will find it in myself to forgive you, but today is not that day. Today is about justice. With Rachel beside me, I left the conference room and walked into the bright afternoon sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in months. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time since the surgery, I felt capable of traveling it. The divorce proceedings dragged on for 6 months. Despite the clear evidence of his infidelity, Jason contested every aspect of our separation. He claimed entitlement to portions of my inheritance, arguing that the trust disqualification should not impact our marital assets. His attorneys filed motion after motion, each requiring responses, hearings, and additional legal fees. Brianna gave birth to a daughter in the midst of the legal battle. She named her Lily, a name Jason and I had once discussed for our own future daughter. The choice felt like one final twist of the knife. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned she had hoped the birth might soften my stance, that the sight of my niece might compel me to relent on the trust disqualification. She was wrong. The child was innocent, yes, but her existence was the physical embodiment of their betrayal. I could not bring myself to see her, not yet. The wound was still too raw, the pain too fresh. Perhaps someday I would be able to separate Lily from the circumstances of her conception, but that day seemed distant and uncertain. I found unexpected support in a therapy group for people who had experienced profound betrayal. Each Tuesday evening, I sat in a circle with men and women who understood the unique pain of having trust shattered by those closest to them. They did not judge my anger or my reluctance to forgive. They recognized the complex grief that comes with losing not just relationships, but the narrative of one's own life. You are mourning multiple losses, explained Dr. Carol Matthews, our group facilitator. The loss of your marriage, the loss of your relationship with your sister, the loss of the future you had imagined. And you are doing this while also recovering physically from a significant surgery. Be gentle with yourself. Those words became a mantra during the darkest days. Be gentle with yourself. When the anger threatened to consume me, when the sadness felt bottomless, when the doubts crept in during the quiet hours of night, be gentle with yourself. Individual therapy with Dr. Sophia Patel helped me process the unique aspects of my situation. The physical connection makes your sister's betrayal particularly complex, she observed during one session. You gave her a literal piece of yourself, and that gift was met with the ultimate betrayal. It is natural to question everything, to wonder if any of it was real. I keep thinking about my kidney, I admitted. Part of me is inside her, keeping her alive, while she carries on with the man who betrayed me. It feels like my own body has betrayed me somehow. Dr. Patel nodded. That is a powerful metaphor, and one worth exploring. But remember, your kidney is no longer yours. It is simply an organ doing its job. It has no loyalty, no memory, no connection to you beyond biology. You gave it freely, and what happened afterward does not diminish the nobility of that gift. Those therapy sessions became anchors in the storm of my new reality. Slowly, I began to rebuild. I threw myself into my work, finding comfort in the structured challenges of digital marketing campaigns. My boss, understanding my situation, offered me a chance to lead a major account, a vote of confidence that boosted my professional self-esteem when my personal confidence was at its lowest. I moved to a new apartment across town, a modern one-bedroom, with large windows and no memories. Decorating it became a form of therapy, each chosen piece a statement of my evolving identity. No items from my marriage made the transition. I started fresh, creating a space that reflected only me and my future, not my painful past. New friendships blossomed. Rachel remained my steadfast supporter, but I also connected with others from my therapy group. There was Alan, whose wife had cheated with his best friend. Samantha, whose fiancé had led a double life for years. Marcus, whose business partner had embezzled their retirement savings. People who understood betrayal in its many forms, who did not offer platitudes about forgiveness or moving on, but who walked alongside me in the messy process of healing. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I made a decision that surprised even me. I established a foundation to support organ donors facing financial or emotional challenges after their surgeries. The Kidney Donor Support Network would provide grants for uncovered medical expenses, counseling services, and practical support during recovery periods. It felt right to transform my pain into something constructive, to ensure other donors would have the support I had lacked. At a medical conference where I was presenting the foundation's work, I met Dr. Stephen Reynolds, a transplant surgeon specializing in kidney procedures. He approached me after my presentation, impressed by the foundation's mission. Most people do not understand the physical and emotional toll donation takes, he said as we shared coffee afterward. Your foundation addresses needs that the medical establishment often overlooks. Our conversation extended well beyond the scheduled time. Stephen had lost his sister to kidney disease when a donor could not be found in time. His career choice had been shaped by that loss. He understood, in a way few others could, both the medical and emotional dimensions of my experience. Our professional relationship gradually evolved into friendship, and eventually into something more. Stephen was patient, never pushing beyond my comfort level, always respecting the boundaries I established as I navigated intimacy after betrayal. He asked thoughtful questions about my experience, and actually listened to the answers. He shared his own vulnerabilities and fears. Most importantly, he demonstrated consistency between his words and actions, rebuilding my capacity for trust one small moment at a time. Throughout this period of healing and growth, I struggled with conflicting feelings about Lily. She was my niece, my blood relation, innocent of her parents' choices. Yet every time I considered meeting her, the pain of betrayal would resurface. Stephen helped me process these feelings without judgment. She is not responsible for the circumstances of her conception, he noted gently. But that does not mean you are required to have a relationship with her on anyone else's timeline. Healing is not linear, and forcing a connection before you are ready would be harmful to both of you. A year into my new life, I received an unexpected email from Brianna. Jason had left her and Lily 3 months earlier, pursuing a relationship with a wealthy divorcee he had met through work. Brianna was struggling financially and emotionally as a single mother. She asked not for money, but for forgiveness, expressing what seemed like genuine remorse for the first time. I did not respond immediately. Instead, I brought the email to my next therapy session, seeking Dr. Patel's guidance. "Do you believe her remorse is genuine?" she asked after reading the message. "I do not know," I answered honestly. "Part of me thinks she is only sorry because their plan failed, because Jason abandoned her. But another part wonders if becoming a mother has changed her perspective, helped her understand the magnitude of what she did. What would maintaining complete separation from Brianna and Lily give you at this point? And what might some form of controlled, limited contact offer?" Those questions stayed with me for weeks as I considered my response. I had worked hard to build a new life, one defined by my choices rather than their betrayal. Was there room in that life for a relationship with my sister, however limited? With my niece, who shared my blood but whose existence stemmed from the greatest pain I had ever experienced? The answers did not come easily, but eventually, I reached a decision that felt right for me. At least for now, I would not resume a sister relationship with Brianna. Some betrayals cut too deep for full reconciliation. But I would not punish Lily for her parents' sins. The child deserved to know her aunt, to have another adult in her life who could offer stability and love. I replied to Brianna, establishing clear boundaries. We would not be friends. We would not discuss the past, unless in the context of a therapist's office. But I would begin spending time with Lily, building a relationship with my niece independent of my feelings toward her mother. It was not forgiveness, not yet. But it was a step away from the all-consuming anger that had threatened to define me in the aftermath of their betrayal. It was a choice to prioritize the future over the past. And in making that choice, I reclaimed a little more of myself. 2 years have passed since I discovered my sister and husband's betrayal. The landscape of my life has transformed completely, like a forest after a devastating fire, new growth emerging from the scorched earth. I now run the Kidney Donor Support Network full-time, having left my marketing career to dedicate myself to helping others navigate the complicated journey of organ donation. The foundation has supported over 200 donors across the country, providing financial assistance, counseling services, and advocacy within the medical system. Each story of a donor who received the support they needed heals another small piece of my own wound. My relationship with Stephen has deepened into something I once thought impossible after Jason's betrayal. True partnership built on mutual respect and unwavering honesty. We moved in together last spring, combining our lives in a lakeside home that feels like a sanctuary. He proposed 3 months ago, not with grand gestures or public displays, but with a simple question asked on an ordinary Tuesday morning over coffee. I said yes without hesitation, trusting both him and my own judgment in a way I had feared might be forever lost to me. Jason's new relationship collapsed within 8 months. I heard through mutual acquaintances that his pattern of opportunistic betrayal continued, that he had been caught embezzling from his new partner's business. He now faces legal consequences that make our divorce proceedings seem trivial by comparison. I feel no satisfaction in his downfall, only a distant sadness for the man I thought I had married, a man who never actually existed. Brianna struggles still, both financially and emotionally. Jason provides minimal child support, often late or incomplete. She works 2 jobs while pursuing an associate degree in medical coding, hoping for a more stable future. Our relationship remains strictly focused on Lily, interactions limited to exchanges during my time with my niece. There are moments when I catch glimpses of the sister I once loved, but the trust between us is irreparably broken. Some betrayals leave permanent scars. Lily is now 2.5, a bright, curious child with her mother's eyes and, mercifully, little resemblance to Jason. She calls me Auntie Lena and fills my phone with pictures of her artwork and videos of her latest accomplishments. I see her twice monthly, special days we spend at museums, parks, or simply baking cookies in my kitchen. Stephen has embraced his role as a bonus uncle, his gentleness with her another testament to his character. After much consideration and consultation with both Daniel and Dorothy, I made a decision regarding the trust that would have shocked me 2 years ago. I established a separate educational trust for Lily, ensuring she will have resources for college and graduate school if she chooses that path. The remainder of my inheritance now funds both my foundation and a separate charitable trust focused on autoimmune disease research. Money that was once the center of so much betrayal now serves purposes larger than any individual's greed. Brianna asked me once, during one of our carefully controlled interactions, if I had forgiven her. The question caught me off guard, forcing me to examine feelings I had kept carefully compartmentalized. I have let go of the active anger, I told her honestly. I no longer wish you ill, but forgiveness suggests a restoration of trust, and that is not possible between us. I have accepted what happened and moved forward with my life. That has to be enough. She nodded, accepting this answer with a maturity I would not have expected from the Brianna I knew before. Perhaps motherhood had changed her, or perhaps the consequences of her actions had forced growth. Either way, we had reached a delicate equilibrium that allowed Lily to benefit from both our presences in her life. The most profound lesson from this entire experience has been understanding the nature of true sacrifice. When I donated my kidney to Brianna, I thought that was the ultimate sacrifice. Physical pain, surgical risk, permanent alteration of my body. But I have come to realize that the greater sacrifice was letting go of my anger, my righteous victimhood, my desire for revenge. Choosing to remain connected to Lily while maintaining boundaries with Brianna required more strength than any surgical procedure. I have learned that healing does not mean erasing the past or pretending the betrayal never happened. It means integrating that experience into a larger life story, one where the betrayal is an important chapter, but not the conclusion. It means recognizing that while trust once broken may never be fully restored with certain individuals, the capacity for trust itself can be rebuilt and redirected toward those who prove worthy of it. My remaining kidney functions perfectly, a daily reminder of my physical resilience. My heart, once shattered by dual betrayal, has reassembled itself into something stronger and more discerning. I no longer fear vulnerability because I have survived its worst consequences. I know now that loving deeply, even with the risk of betrayal, is still preferable to never loving at all. The kidney I gave to Brianna saved her life. But ironically, her betrayal may have saved mine in a different way, forcing me to examine what truly matters, to build a life aligned with my deepest values rather than external expectations. It freed me from a marriage that was not what it seemed and redirected me toward work that brings genuine fulfillment. If you are watching this and struggling with betrayal, know that the path through the pain is not linear. There will be days when forgiveness seems impossible, when the hurt feels as fresh as the moment of discovery. That is normal. Healing happens in its own time. Be gentle with yourself, surround yourself with people who understand without judgment, and remember that your story does not end with the betrayal. It continues, with every choice you make thereafter. The kidney I donated to my sister now exists in a body I rarely see, but I no longer feel betrayed by that physical connection. It is simply an organ doing its job, sustaining life regardless of the moral failings of its host. There is a strange peace in that biological reality, a reminder that some gifts, once given, exist beyond our control. What are your thoughts on forgiveness after betrayal? Have you ever had to rebuild trust after it was broken, or decided that some relationships cannot be repaired? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and healing. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is not diminished by those who failed to recognize it.